Hello, welcome to this week's lecture on reading for research. A lot of the ideas in this lecture come directly from William Badke's Research Strategies book. Reading is important, fun, and can be thrilling. It can inspire us in many ways. It can add to your knowledge base and help us learn more and become more competent in so many areas of work and life. Recall a moment when reading a book or website has inspired you. The story goes that when a girl asked Abby for advice, she told her that she should read a lot, that this would help her prepare for life. After all, the person who does not read really has no advantage over the person who cannot read. The more you read, the more you'll know and learn. In terms of reading for research, William Badke talks about the difference between a glutton and a connoisseur. Gluttons consume escapist literature. They're fascinated with the action, so they read from beginning to end and they don't miss a page. They're led along by the plot. This kind of reading requires no analysis, and you just let the skilled author lead you along. A connoisseur, on the other hand, enjoys a well-crafted mystery novel. So on the right, we have Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Hound of the Baskervilles, which is a Sherlock Holmes mystery. A well-crafted mystery novel, according to William Badke, requires discernment. The reader pauses to think over the clues periodically. The excitement can be figuring out who did it or what happened by piecing together the different clues. William Badke states that research is not for gluttons. Be a connoisseur. When it comes to research, search for the bits or clues in the readings that relate to your question. Carefully analyze your sources. Don't read every single word on every single page. Any book or article you read for research purposes must be used and left behind as quickly as possible, even though you must never take anything out of context. You need to find information that you need to use. Every skill you have to sift quickly through what you don't need and find what you do need. When it comes to research, search for the bits or clues in the readings that relate to your question. Carefully analyze your sources. Don't read every single word on every single page. This is what he means when he says, be ruthless. Read what you need and abandon the rest. It's your only hope. That's what Bill Badke says, and I second that motion as well. He cautions that we need to read enough of an author's work to get a good idea of his or her main message. Otherwise, we may take things out of context. Be very sure you have grasped not only what the author is saying, but why the author is saying it. This leads us to his 5 suggestions for reading a book for research. He also provides ideas for reading scholarly articles for research. The first thing you do with a book is to read the title page, the preface, the foreword, and/or the introduction. These parts of the book can help you understand the motive or the reason for the book. Also, pay attention to subtitles because they often reveal the true purpose of the book. Let's look at this title page here. The title reads, What Happened to My Sisters? A Look at Compulsive Hoarding. If the title only consisted of that first part, it could be about any number of things. What happened to my sisters when they went to college? What happened to my sisters when they traveled abroad? It could be anything, but the second half of the title makes it a little clearer. It gives us some clues that maybe this book is more about the psychological inability to discard unnecessary things. A look at the rest of the information on this title page indicates that the author, Jean Alexander Booth, wrote this master's thesis in fulfillment of her degree within the Department of Human Development, So here we are talking about human development, which may be closely connected to psychology. William Bakke also suggests to look at the table of contents. Not every table of contents looks this detailed, but many academic books provide chapter titles and section headings. So if you are doing a research paper on parents coping with the challenges of autistic children, then you could look for this topic in the table of contents and identify specific parts. Chapter 2, pages 25 through 32, talk about parental stress and parental coping. With this information, you could go straight to those pages, but you need to remember that Chapter 2 is the literature review. A literature review gives a summary of what has been said in other people's academic papers about this topic. If you want to know what this author's research findings are on how parents cope with raising autistic children, then we can look at Chapter 4 beginning on page 54. Remember to be ruthless. You can have a better idea of what the author is talking about as it relates to your research question by briefly looking at relevant sections of the book rather than having to read every word on every page. Third, have a look at the index. Compare the stuff in the index with the table of contents. Using the index at the back of the book will help you quickly find those pages in the book that relate specifically to your research question. Also consider looking for synonyms of your keywords in the index. When using an index to find what you need, it can be especially easy to take things out of context. If you found something on page 232, remember that there were 231 pages before that, so be careful not to take things out of context. When using ebooks or looking at long articles, don't forget to use the Control F function to search for places in the sources that talk about your research. This is the modern version of an index. Fourth, be sure to give the book a run-through, even if you're only going to use a part of it. If you fail to do so, you may completely miss the overall intent of the volume, and thus misunderstand what you are reading in one portion of it. This can be done by skimming through the book and reading the subheadings. Look at the images in the book, including any graphs or statistics. These could give clues about the book's meaning. Also, go over the summary or concluding chapter. Usually, authors include their key ideas in the concluding chapter, so make sure you take a look at those, even if it's just briefly to understand what they were really trying to say. Usually, authors include their key ideas in the concluding chapter, so make sure you take a look at those, even if it's just briefly to understand what they were really trying to say. Another thing you can do is go and look for book reviews, especially for books that are more challenging to comprehend. Often, a book review is written by another person in the field, so they identify what the book is about and give you ideas on why this book contributes to the field. Be forewarned that we don't want you to use book reviews for your sources. They may be helpful, but we want you to use the actual books for your annotated bibliography. Fifth, as Bakke has written, when it comes to reading the appropriate portions of the book, be a connoisseur of the argument, not a glutton who does not evaluate what he thinks as long as he got food in front of her or. Fifth, as Bakke has written, when it comes to reading the appropriate portions of the book, be a connoisseur of the argument, not a glutton who does not evaluate what he thinks as long as he got food in front of him or her. There's only one way to read when you are doing research, by asking constant questions. Questions form the absolutely most reliable key to good analysis. End quote. Here are some questions you might consider. How does this relate to my research question. What evidence is the author sharing that would be useful for my research? What is the author saying? Is the evidence presented fairly? Is there enough evidence? Does the evidence support the author's case? Pay attention to all the questions William Badke offers in the chapter reading this week, and consider asking yourself similar questions when you look at your sources. When you ask questions, that's an invitation for insight to come to you, so be prepared for that insight when it comes. Don't forget to write things down, or you may forget those ideas that come to you. Now we have finished talking about suggestions for reading books for research. We will shift gears and talk about 4 steps for reading an article. First, find an abstract or a summary of the article. Reading the abstract helps you know what the article is about. Like William Badke says, a good abstract will help you know the main points and conclusions of the author. Second, William Badke says you should watch for key propositions. He defines this term in the following manner. A key proposition is a statement of what the author believes to be true. Where do you suppose you might find the key propositions? Are they going to appear in the methods section? Probably not. The methods section tells the reader how they conducted a study. Sometimes you might find the key proposition or the thesis in the introduction, but if not, look in the analysis, discussion sections, or the article conclusion. Thinking about an article's organization may also help us know where to look for the information we need. A lot of times authors propose a question at the beginning, then they provide evidence, and finally they conclude with their key propositions or main points. So the key proposition almost always appears at the end. Some authors will provide the key proposition right at the beginning. They'll talk about their methods, the evidence they've gathered, and discuss these findings in their analysis section. In the end, they'll have a conclusion that will restate their key proposition. Summaries written for assignments in this class will help you develop synthesis writing skills. They should also give you more practice identifying relevant information and developing more advanced reading skills. When you read sources for your assignments in this class, be sure to use your research question to help you identify those parts in the source that are most relevant. Include relevant evidence from the sources in your summaries. Remember to paraphrase and use direct quotations if you want to use their exact words. The third suggestion Bill Badke offers is to check out the author's conclusion. We have talked about this a little bit already. Usually that's where the most important information is found. Remember to look at it. Don't skip the conclusion. Fourth, read the whole thing, particularly if you don't really know what the article is about or the key ideas. Sometimes you just have to do it. In most cases, and especially for this class, I believe that you can skip those method sections in the articles, but you definitely should be reading the introduction and conclusions. Give a lot of thought to reading the analysis and the discussion sections of those articles. If you can learn how to skim for the main ideas, that may be helpful. William Badke suggests, as you go, try to abstract the article for yourself on paper. It will help your understanding, and if you ever have to refer to it again in a week, by which time you've forgotten you ever read it, you'll be one step ahead. You can also write notes in the margins. Highlighting too much is not always helpful. Sometimes it can undermine the key ideas or even the most important parts of a sentence. Sometimes you can underline the key ideas or even the most important parts of a sentence. It's not helpful to underline every single word, but it's more helpful to write in the margins and summarize a whole paragraph in a few words. When you come back after a week, you will be able to read those margin notes and those few important things that you underlined, and you will remember a lot. Of course, this can save you a lot of time finding the main ideas and propositions that you have already discovered. Finally, let me explain a method that I learned from one of my college professors. He recommended that we apply this method at the beginning and the end of our reading. It just takes 2 or 3 minutes to write these things down before and after you read. PTIC is an acronym, and the P stands for purpose, T equals topic, I is for issue, last, C equals claim. P stands for purpose. What is the purpose of this article, chapter, book, web page, etc.? Is it to inform, entertain, or persuade? Ask yourself about the author's purpose in writing and about your own purpose for reading. T stands for topic. What is the topic at hand? Is it about gang violence, current debates in Congress, or the latest popular movie? I stands for issue. What question are they trying to answer? What is the issue at hand? Maybe it is about the reason why gang violence is going up. Perhaps they are talking about why Congress wants to authorize military attacks on Syria. What is the new movie about? Each of these questions represents an issue. Finally, C stands for claim. This is the answer to the issue or question. Using some of the examples already given, someone might say there are fewer police officers this year, which may explain why there have been more drive-by shootings than a year ago. Congress does not want to send more soldiers to war. Therefore, the United States should not be involved in the Syrian conflict. The new movie stars Jason Statham in an action-packed movie with lots of explosions. These are just a few examples of claims. This is a method that's worth using at the beginning and the end of your reading assignments. So after reading it all, look at the PTIC method and ask yourself what's different. What's the same? Write down answers to each letter in PTIC. Write a sentence or two about the claim. Write down the question. Also, keep these questions in mind when you're doing your research. Let's talk a little bit about writing summaries. A summary is a short report about something that happened or that you read. In this class, you will be asked to provide summaries of different sources. When we provide a summary, it is helpful to answer the basic journalism questions like who, what, when, and where. Sometimes they answer the more difficult why and how questions, but not always. With this class, we ask that your summaries answer questions that deal with the relevance of the source to your question. How does it relate to your research question? What evidence from the source would you want to use? If you strategically read your sources using the tips we have shared, then your chances of finding relevant information in your sources should increase. From our perspective, we want to see evidence that you have read at least part of your sources. We want to see that you have found information that can be used to help you answer your question. If you have any questions about reading for research, please don't hesitate to talk to us or ask us questions. Thank you for listening. I hope you find many fun and interesting things to read. We'll talk to you later. Have a good day. Goodbye.